everyone, this is Domina Mara and welcome back to my channel. This is a recap video on my recent trip to Honolulu, Oahu in Hawaii. For now, sit back, relax, and enjoy as I take you through my journey. We're actually going to start a day early on the 16th of September, and that is when I started packing. I had bought these luggage tags a while ago, but they were super huge and I didn't expect them to be this big, but they fit my vaccination card perfectly. I have a bunch of new floral prints that I added to my wardrobe collection recently, and of course I had to pair them with gold accessories. The next day I woke up before dawn and headed to LAX, where I flew on Hawaiian Airlines and was Honolulu bound. While on the trip, I took a nap and then woke up to a lovely bake lunch and some tomato juice, and I decided to watch a movie. I saw that there was Journey 2 on screen, and I was like, the background looks pretty familiar, and although I didn't know that they actually filmed this in Hawaii, I saw The Rock on it and put the two together. And guess what? Later on in this video, you'll find out I was right. Don't forget to click that subscribe button and give this video a like. Upon landing, I got a shuttle taken to the rental place that I had booked a reservation for a car. Last time I was in Oahu, I did not have transportation, so I was kind of stuck in Waikiki and the east part of the island. However, this time I wanted to explore as much of the island as I could within the 6 days that I was there. Lucky Owl is a local rental car company, and I highly suggest them if you plan on visiting this island. They are super nice, very affordable, and business was quick and easy. It was a little too early to check in to my B&B, so I decided to head into town and eat brunch at a local restaurant. 604 restaurant brings both tourists and soldiers from the U.S. Army alike to dine and drink to our heart's content. I decided to get a Bloody Mary and oyster shooters since, I just got off the plane. Their portions were huge. I got a mahi-mahi platter, and my pup got a huge double patty pork burger. We were seated right out front of the marina and had a wonderful view of the waterfront. Since Pearl City was so close to Lucky Owl and the airport, I planned to take a stop at Pearl Harbor. For those of you who have or have not been, this is a really easy and open layout that they had created for this space, and it was free admission for the public areas. The memorial did justice to all of the fallen soldiers, and I really liked how equal they made each of the sides on both the American and the Japanese forces, their hardships, and their camaraderie. I also liked that they didn't sugarcoat how Japanese Americans were treated during that time, and to bring awareness towards World War II and how far we have progressed to today. The submarine and battleships, as well as all the models that people took the time to build and maintain, were very powerful. To brighten the mood, the next place that I went to was the Disney Aulani Resort. I've always seen ads for this vacation spot, but I had never visited it until now. It is located right beside the Four Seasons, and they have a gorgeous walkway along the beach, dipping into 4 different lagoons. I was able to see at least one rainbow every day I was in Hawaii, although some days I wasn't able to capture it as I was on the go. But seeing them reminds me of how much I am blessed and how fitting it is, as Hawaii is called the Rainbow State. I explored the Aulani grounds for a little bit more, spotting a snorkeling tank with live fish and people who were dressed in scuba gear to watch them. The grounds are like a mini water amusement park in which you could jump in and out of if you had the wristband. As well as walking into their lobby, which had really tall ceilings that kind of looked like Gothic or Nordic architecture to me, which is a little strange, but they decorated their shade structures and rocks and every little type of detail that they could to fit in with the Hawaiian landscape. Everything was made out of wood, like the banisters and furniture. And then it was time to step back outside where I could walk along the palm trees and just enjoy the ocean breeze. After that, I decided to check into the place that I was staying, and it had a wonderful view of the west side of Waikiki. As nighttime fell, I explored the place I was staying at and decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. It was a full moon, so she illuminated the scenery really beautifully as I walked through hotels to the beach and back. After walking through a park, we stopped by Henry's place to buy lychee or lychee ice cream, which tasted like shaved ice and sorbet mashed together, if that makes any sense. And then it was time to head back and go to bed. The next day I woke up and actually saw the sunrise because Hawaii is actually 3 hours behind Pacific time, which is where Los Angeles is. And so I was able to catch many sunrises and just see the rays peek through the buildings. After getting up and getting ready, I was able to go to Heavenly Cafe, where there were really good reviews on their Benedicts and their version of Loco Moco. And then it was time to go to the Iolani Palace. If you guys are in Hawaii, I highly encourage you to not only just do the touristy beach things, but actually immerse yourself in their culture. The first time I came to Oahu, I did just that. I was relaxing by the beach. It was a very superficial type of vacation where I didn't have to worry about anything. I dedicated time to just being in nature and relaxed when I wasn't playing. This time I wanted to actually go around the entire island and see what it really meant to be Hawaiian. The first place of education was the Iolani Palace. As gorgeous as the space is, you actually get to see a really sad side of how the Hawaiian monarchy ended. I'm not going to detail too much of the history here, but I do want to say that like a lot of colonized countries, such as the Philippines, which is where my mother's side is from, as well as the United States of America, where native tribes originated, we must make the conscious effort to just shed that ignorance and to really understand where all of these people who were indigenous to the lands came from and how their culture has been shifted into fusing or being overtaken by colonizers or those who have tried to overthrow what was already built in the foundation of the country and of the people. The monarchy had both men and women who took care of their people and were loved by those people because of that. One of the kings explored the world and was able to bring back electricity as well as modern technology for that time, such as irrigation and indoor plumbing, electricity, and even telephones. Fashion was inspired by British culture, but there were flares of Hawaii's own tastes and essence, such as these peacock feathers on this gown. Although a lot of the influences came from the Western world and Europe, Hawaii never forgot their origins. Unfortunately, when the Westerners did overthrow the monarchy, the Hawaiian language and culture suffered greatly, and diseases wiped out most of the people. This is why I believe that it is important to, as a visitor, really understand not just how the land came to be, but also how the people came to be, their evolution from the past to the present, and how it looks moving forward into the future. A lot of these rooms were beautifully designed, not too overpowering with material objects, but just enough to fill out all the spaces and really showcase what kinds of people ruled the land. There were artists who composed songs. There were brilliant diplomats who studied and made sure that they understood where the world was going and what other countries did. Although some of the names of the kings and queens were Western, they also remembered to keep a little bit of their Hawaiian selves by creating dual names that represented each side. The palace is actually 3 floors, 2 of which are above ground, where you enter on street level, take a staircase going up on one side of the rail and coming down on the other, and then heading back outside and down into the basement, where there was kind of like a war room, all the crown jewels, the kitchen, and furniture pieces that were actually recognized not too long ago by those who had been to the Iolani Palace and saw that the chairs were the same, even though they were stripped of their gold leaf and their fancy brocade upholstery. After the Iolani Palace, it was time to drive all the way to the other side of the island where I have never been before. Kualoa Ranch is a huge property that was gifted to a Western advisor that became very good friends with one of the kings of Hawaii. He was actually also a doctor who helped the Hawaiian people during rough times. Since then, his family has created a tourist attraction that features many things such as behind the scenes for movie sets, horseback riding, ATVing, catamaran sailing, and much more. Since I arrived very early in order to check in, I was able to eat a quick lunch with a kalua pork sandwich while watching birds run around the property freely. Check out the scale of these mountains. It's so unreal. It looked like a painting or CGI, and I was actually in a movie. I was able to pass by the stables as well as a little museum to talk about the background of the ranch. Here's King Kamehameha, who is the first king of Hawaii, as well as a very detailed model of the valley. It's really cool that they also have a Kualoa Ranch market where all of the agriculture that they have on the property, including the cows, get turned into profitable meat that they sell at this market. All of the fruits and jams and oysters, shrimp can be found in this market and are collected weekly. Check out these big tortoises, a petting area for other animals. There were so many movies and TV shows and even music videos that were filmed on this ranch that I would have never have guessed or have never seen before. And so just looking at the sheer amount of actors and stills from all of these visual pieces really gave a good impact. I had something planned at the Kualoa Ranch 3 days in a row. Today I was going to go on an ocean voyage on a catamaran. It was a 90-minute trip out and back from the secret island that was purchased also by the ranch, which hosts a brackish water pond. There we saw some jellyfish and kind of got a tour of the fruits, the nuts, coconuts, and of course, all types of fish. Took a ferry over to the other side of the island where we walked on the beach and then got onto the actual catamaran. sausage puppy was ready to go with his life vest on. How cute is that? We saw about 4 turtles while we were out there after we passed a couple islands, and it was just a really fun, relaxing ride under the Hawaiian sun. Look at how crazy, big, and sharp and dangerous these creatures look. I swear the more tropical you get, the more aggressive the wildlife gets as well, because survival of the fittest. Next stop was the Bishop Museum. Upon arriving, I also had to use a restroom, so the closest one was located in the planetarium. Unfortunately, it was not open to the public. However, check out this cool holographic space poster. This first building, where it looks like a castle, is where all of that kind of history is, all the way until Pearl Harbor. The first thing I saw was this really grand staircase that kind of reminded me of the one in the Iolani Palace. But the first room actually surprised me, and it was dedicated to just these feather staffs. This is really symbolic for the royalty and chiefs of Polynesian cultures, and it's made out of real feathers from different types of birds. They make this nice egg-shaped plumage at the top, and the staff is made out of a special tree carving that is dressed in ribbons and different colors, designed towards the monarch or the chief that they had in mind. What I knew about the Bishop Museum was that there was a lot of Polynesian culture, such as the origins of Polynesian people. They used to be wayfinders and navigators on the seas and would build their own boats to do rites of passage and sail across or voyage together to go find new islands. If you've seen the Disney movie Moana, kind of like that. However, over time, throughout the reigns of the monarchy and with new technologies being introduced to the islands through Westerners, influences started to change and modernize the people. The interior is made out of wood and glass, housing all of these precious artifacts, and it looks like a natural history museum. There were 3 floors, and each floor went in depth with clothing, tools, cultural rituals, hunting supplies and gear, textiles, all the way to modern art. How cool is this weapon-looking like thing made out of shells? I don't think I could play with this one because I would probably break skin, but it's very innovative nonetheless. The next part of the museum was actually modern art. And I was a little skeptical because I am very particular about contemporary and modern art, and I was very, very surprised. This car should have already given me a little bit of a hint as to what I would find inside, but I don't even know how they got some of this stuff in here, like cars and built in a New York scene setting. It's so crazy. Look at how many artists that they have collected in this space. The space wasn't that small, but still they were able to condense it with sculptures, paintings, people that I've actually met, such as this guy who created Tokidoki, the brand, as well as Audrey Kawasaki and Shepard Fairey, and so much more. Many more local artists that I actually get to see later on in the Arts District the next day. It was so overwhelming in the best way possible, and these murals and paintings were huge, literally from floor to ceiling. They even made a bathroom area that was full of graffiti. After this, it was time to go to the last building. That's right, there was one more building to go to at the Bishop Museum, and that was the Science Hall. This was actually the best order that we could have possibly gone through because I needed something to kind of tone me down back and grab me back into reality. So this was kind of the perfect place to do that. They had this giant volcano exhibition where you can push buttons to release gases or cause eruptions. And one of my favorite parts was this black light hallway full of marine creatures and sea animals, and it was really interactive, which I really like. It's kind of like an exploratorium for kids of all ages and adults. I wasn't done with just one museum. No, the fourth event that I had planned for this day was the HOMA, the Honolulu Museum of Art. You would think that from the title that this would also be very Hawaiian oriented, and it is, but in a different way than you probably think. There was a lot of Asian art, from China to Japan and Korea, even the Philippines, and some Indian pieces. These were all from the ancient worlds and the first floor of the space. Outside, there were a culmination of collages using different mediums such as mosaic, yarn, and different themed gardens with fountains and stages for summertime music. On the second floor, that's where the Hawaiian art really started to showcase. I thought that it would be a lot of stuff kind of like the Polynesian cultural aspects of the Bishop Museum, but it's actually Hawaii's modern art. And there's a big homeless and unemployment problem in the state of Hawaii, and the art that was present showed how to start the journey of solving these current issues. There was also a lot of gender identity and art pieces that gave space to female bodies and those who have unfortunately been abused in the past. But this was a positive way that people could anonymously write what had happened to them, if they healed, how they healed, and each candle was lit for the first 1,000 that had shared their stories. Hawaiian waters from all over the state were recorded and put onto a projection over the flag. Here's a domination vase that I found to be really in theme with me being in the museum. There were paintings that expressed anguish, that expressed joy, that were simply objective portraits but through the eyes of different artists. Classical paintings that were from certain renaissances over the eras of art around the world. By the time I got outside, it was nighttime and the moon had risen and my feet were literally dead tired. The next day was another big day. After the sun rose, I decided to get a quick breakfast at a place that was highly rated, that had Japanese owners and did fusion Hawaiian brunch items. Everything was super delicious. I got an 8-ounce steak loco moco, which tided me over until the late afternoon. Between breakfast and getting back into the car, it rained heavily, like literally it poured, and I think this is how Hawaii stays so green all year round. The first order of business was driving to the Valley of Temples. It looks like a cemetery from far away, but if you drive along this road, you'll see different types of churches, monasteries. And all the way to the end is something called the Byodo-in Temple. This is a Japanese shrine that is dedicated to Buddhism, and I found out about this while researching things to do in Oahu that I hadn't seen before on my previous trip. It started raining pretty hard, but luckily Hawaiian weather allows for hard rain followed by really warm breezes that gave me time to really explore the grounds, ring their huge bell with intention. I lit an incense for my grandmother since I haven't been able to see her since prior to the pandemic and had to cancel my trip to the Philippines last year when COVID hit hard. I watched a family feed fishes. They knew from their shadows that were hovering over them that it was feeding time. There was bamboo that grew so high up that it looked like it could touch the sky. Walking through the side parts of the temple grounds really felt like a fairy tale, with these pink flowers that were scattered all over the grounds and roots that were intertwined underground. Trees would touch even though they were so far away from each other. And met Fluffy, this really friendly cat who was on his way to attack a bird but decided to come to me instead for pets. After I absorbed all of the nature that I could from this place while still being able to keep to my busy schedule for the day, I was able to appreciate a few more details before heading out to Kualoa Ranch once again. This time I stopped by the gift shop to take a look at the inside, grabbed another souvenir penny, and it was then time to go onto the Hollywood movie sites tour. I wouldn't call myself a big blockbuster fan, and to be honest, I haven't seen more than half of the movies and TV shows that they have mentioned that were filmed on their property. But since I've worked in the film and entertainment industry, I felt that it is just a great way to bring it full circle and see where things are actually made outside of the mainland. And since, I am based out of Los Angeles, where Hollywood is, there was this cave that was dug out by the side of the mountain to film multiple scenes for the Jurassic series, King Kong Skull Island, Jumanji, Lost, and here I present to you Journey 2. See? I recognized those mountains in the background while I was doing my Hawaiian research. You name it, if it has a big jungle with crazy tall mountains in the background, it's most likely filmed at Kualoa Ranch. Usually if you work on set of movies and TV shows, you kind of don't really get to appreciate the magic as much. Maybe if you watch the TV show or movie later and you see all the visual effects and how everything is edited perfectly, it's rewarding. But there's something about actually visiting a space in which Mother Nature has created herself, and people literally fly from all over the world just to come to this location and pay lots and lots of money to shoot at. There are lots of fruits and other animals that they take care of on this property. They sell all the vegetables, as you've seen previously, and different cuts of meat, not only cows, but actually these wild pigs too. Check out this giant foot that has been dug out to resemble a dinosaur print in the ground. This was my favorite part of the tour, where these skulls were from King Kong and they are made out of styrofoam. And because there are free-range cows on the property that come by and eat the grass, they also sit and crush some of these bones, so it's not as well maintained as they would like. But I guess it is a little bit more authentic that way, and they do their best to, preserve as much as they can. It really felt like I was on another planet while I took these photos. Not because of the props necessarily, but because of the environment. There was sunshine, there was rain, there were clouds that moved really quickly. It was an experience. After the ranch, I had an appointment at a catamaran. The catamaran company is called Makani, and later on we'll get to what that actually means in Hawaiian. Next to our boat was another captain who was checking out our group, and he literally had a legitimate hook for a hand on his left arm. How crazy. I hadn't been on this west side of Waikiki before. I was going to be on a boat for over 3 hours. This also gave me some time to enjoy nature and the fresh air along the marina while the sun was still shining really strong. And the way that the clouds made shadows over the mountains was just unreal. I got to see the lighthouse from this other side, unlike last time where I just saw it from land. We got a chance to watch other boats sail by, and this submarine that was just chilling in the water with part of its top resting above the waves. And it was about a 90-minute tour out on choppy waves and back. Yes, there was actually an intermission where we got to get off the boat and the captain and his crew got to take a little bit of a break. And while that was happening, I decided to take a walk to go get some sake. There was a local shop in the arts district, and remember how I saw all of those amazing artists at the Bishop Museum, well, this is all of their stuff that is open to the public for free if you have access to this neighborhood. It's kind of industrial and residential at the same time. There are apartments, businesses, small shops around here. As you can see, so many beautiful colors and murals. The sake I got was a beautiful floral front with slight darker stone fruit qualities, and it was delicious. I got to see another Audrey Kawasaka larger-than-life piece, as well as some other ones that are just breathtaking. It began to rain a little bit, but I was able to catch 3 different rainbows, which was so magical. I saw my first triple rainbow ever. You can't really see it here, but you can see the tail end of another rainbow later on. And now you will never wonder why Hawaii is called the Rainbow State. For the second ride of the catamaran, I didn't realize that I actually had open bar access. And I not only got to know the crew a lot better, but I got to meet Captain John. He literally built this catamaran that he's had for over 10 years now. His story started out in Washington State, and then he left to go sail and live his life in Hawaii on the islands. Eventually, he got investors to fund his dream of owning a catamaran, and there are no other catamarans in this design on the island. This is an original. We got to say cheers to him and watch the sunset, and he even let me drive the catamaran for a little bit. So earlier I discussed that Makani meant something in Hawaiian, and when I asked Captain John, he said yes, it means no refunds. But jokes aside, it actually is the wind. I thought that was such a beautiful and perfect name for his boat. It was such an amazing experience and probably one of the biggest highlights of this trip for me personally. As we were docking, everybody just kind of stood around in silence as we watched the colors of the sky change. It went from this pouring rain where only 4 of us were out on the deck and blinded by the water hitting our face and soaking our clothes, to warm tropical breezes that dried all of us and kind of greeted us with this beautiful sea breeze of a sunset. After this boat ride, I decided to grab some poke at Redfish, and then it was time to head back to go to bed. The next day, I woke up early and caught a ride to a rainforest. Check out another rainbow here. And as the name mentions, it is literally a rainforest. They claim that it rains about 70, maybe to 80% of the time, almost daily at this rainforest, and that is why everything is so lush and green there. They filmed a bunch of different movies here as well, because how can you not, with all of these huge trees and big leaves that just keep spiraling up each of the trunks. The exotic flowers and the amounts of animals that live here naturally are just amazing to watch and listen to. And of course, while we were arriving, it started pouring, but it was alright because it was warm, tropical weather, and it added to another level of experience for the hike. There were waterfalls down these little creeks and rivers, and I believe all of this water carries out into the ocean eventually. So the waterfall was about a mile or so to the top of the hill, and I stopped a lot along the way because there were different regions of plants that were planted along the way. One of which was bamboo, which grows super fast and super tall and in different colors. And the vines just look so unreal. They are literally the epitome of nature and organic shapes. And although there are thousands of them, or millions even, no two grow alike. Check out this little green frog that I caught hopping up the mountain with us. Upon reaching the waterfall, it was rushing down the rock in a pretty consistent stream. It was tough not to look away from it and just bask yourself in the showering sounds of the entire space. That's also kind of why I left the ambient sound here in this part, because it's just so quiet and you can hear every single drop fall onto the ground, the way your shoes shift the pebbles underneath your feet, and the way that birds are communicating high up in the canopies that are multiple feet above you, shading you from the rain. I feel like this is what the world would look like if humans were extinct, because life will still continue through other animals and evolving plants that will just come back and take over. It's so amazing how you can excavate or blow up a site or dig out roots of a surface level of a parking lot or a plot of land or a farm agriculture site, and the roots of other plants or the seeds that fall from winds or wings of birds will repopulate and regrow something else, something different or something the same in the environment, and it will always just grow back. As long as there's water and sunlight, she will grow back. On the bright side of things, humans do have a tendency to take care of things when they are in a healthy state of mind. It gives them positive reinforcement in their lives and just a general well-being that they are able to succeed in growing stuff that can potentially either help them live by nourishing them through food or nourishing their souls through spiritual and physical appreciation of the natural beauty of the world. This is why I also use tree planting search engines. I am adamant about recycling and reusing as much as possible, saving water, having a two-step irrigation process within my own home with watering my own plants if I can. And so I think it's just really important to remember that there's a much bigger picture than the world that you're just living, but also the responsibility and dedication we should have to the environment and the world around us that houses us and helps feed us. I think when I remember that I do my part and I'm able to appreciate nature where other people have also taken care of the land, like here in Hawaii, it really just makes it so much more wonderful. The feeling inside of yeah, humanity is doing something. Humanity is okay, and the world's gonna be okay as long as we keep this up. The walk back down was actually a lot quicker, as the return of a journey usually is. But our meeting spot was at a different location, and so we got to actually pass Lyon or Lyon Arboretum on the way, go up to a visitor center area and experience some chickens and a kitten before heading out for the day. It was already past noon when we arrived back into the city, and I really wanted to try spam musubi and how the locals in Hawaii made them. So I looked up the highest rated place, and a musubi cafe popped up. There was already a line, and it took me about 20 minutes to get an order out, but everything was super fresh. The rice was so soft and fluffy, and the fillings actually took up a lot of the centers, and overall the seasoning was really delicious and clean, not too oily. While eating, I was able to head to Kualoa Ranch once again. Today I was going to be driven around in a Jeep. This exhibition was going to be a little bit different, where it was more nature forward. A lot of the things that we expect to see on the ranch are movie based, and that's not to say we're not going to do that today as well. However, it was all about the high vantage views. We didn't see any pigs here today, but we did see a lot of cows. Cows are actually great for the environment here on the ranch. However, if you're a carnivore, you would be able to purchase both beef and pork at their market every week, in addition to the seafood that they catch. One of the biggest highlights on these tours is the view. Because you are high up in elevation, you can literally look down onto the ocean and see how beautiful and blue and vast the Pacific is. Of course, what is a Jeep expedition without stopping by a couple of movie sites? So we got to see the helicopter crash that was used in King Kong Skull Island, and of course, Jurassic World. If you guys saw my community post here on YouTube, you guys know that I actually saw Jurassic World when it first came out in 4D, which means that the seats move around while you're watching the movie in a theater with 3D glasses on. This was the last time that I was actually in the Philippines, and I miss it very much. That's another tropical place that I have on the top of my list when travel is readily available once again, internationally. After taking a few photos of this styrofoam set, I found these really beautiful pink flowers that fell on the ground from this tree, and I picked up a really pretty blossom that was still fresh and just kept it in my ear until I got back to the hotel so that I could press it into my scrapbook. After the ranch, it was time to go to the Polynesian Cultural Center. As I mentioned before, I really wanted to learn more about not just Hawaii, but a lot of the other surrounding islands that are within the Polynesian Triangle. I learned that this triangle was made up of Hawaii, Easter Island, aka Rapa Nui, and all the way to Tonga, which is right on the other side of Fiji. This also included the Cook Islands, which is right outside of New Zealand, where the Maori people are from. So we have the Tonga, Maori, Hawaii, Fiji, Samoa, Tahiti, Tuvaluan, Tokelauan. The last two, I think, are sub-regions of Oceania. So the Polynesian Cultural Center is actually divided by these Polynesian countries, and each of them have their own demonstrations on what their culture is most known for, such as learning poi, if you guys know the flow arts, which is what my Goddess Mara channel is based off of. You might recognize some of the techniques that are used here, as well as in, flogging. While I was researching, I recognized that there was one of the biggest luau's that happened here. And unfortunately, because I booked only a month and a half in advance, they were literally sold out all the way through November, which was really surprising. But I decided that I was going to go elsewhere for an authentic luau this time around. I took the last boat from one end of the center to the other while listening to a fellow kababayan person, aka a person from the Philippines, that gave a quick tour of the place as well as some funny jokes. I did get there a little late since I was doing the Jeep exhibition, so I wasn't able to see a lot of performances, and I kind of had to rush around the center and on the islands. So I highly suggest that you come here earlier in the day when it first opens, and that way you'll be able to take your time and really learn about each of the countries. But I was still able to appreciate the architectures, the handmade huts, check out the rope work here. It's super neat, and that's kind of what I like to see, especially since, I'm a fan of Kimbaku and Shibari, and everything was literally built by hand, including these boats, which is pretty awesome. I really liked the open format of each of these spaces. It really felt like a real village. And unfortunately, the place closed at around 5 to 5:30, and that was the time when people would start heading over to the main hall for a buffet for the luau. It smelled really good, but it was time for me to head back to eat dinner. This is a guy who invented the shaka, the thumb and the pinky hand wave, and it was actually because he had lost his 3 fingers, the 3 long fingers in between, and it just became a thing that stuck around with the locals. The sunset on the drive back was, of course, phenomenal, with these saturated clouds complementing the waves and mountains. I originally wanted to try to eat at this market that was close to the place that I was staying at, but everything was so busy that I decided to go off the strip for some Japanese food at Zigu. The dinner was tasty, however, I don't know if I would come back here if they were going to give very dainty portions for the price. After that, I was able to meet up with W, and it was really fun. We took my paracord with a whole pack of 26 clothespins, and you can imagine what kind of tea we did with his C and B. And the next day was kind of the final day that closed off all of my activities, but once again, of course, knowing me and how I plan, it was a completely full day, and it was really exciting because I got to start out with brunch towards the North Shore. I ordered a lobster roll, which was absolutely delicious because it was nice and cold and refreshing. The Dole Plantation was the next stop, and I dressed appropriately for learning about how pineapples grow because I'm matching like that. So Dole was a single person who created an empire off of literally planting and harvesting and cultivating processes of pineapples here in Oahu. They also bought a separate island to do processes there, but then closed that down later. But they have all the space they need to literally export to anywhere around the world. I bought tickets to go on the train ride, which gave us a pretty good tour. It was like a 45-minute narration on the history of the plantation and who Dole was and the types of soil that was kind of reddish due to the iron and minerals that were in them that helped with the production and growth of said pineapples. This was also the first time that I ever saw a pineapple like growing from the ground and hanging off from the tree. It was super bizarre because I always thought that they grew underground and that they were just dug up after they grew, but that's not the case. Unfortunately, there were things that weren't available, like the how to cut a pineapple open demonstration, which would have been useful because I don't know how to do that. And there were chocolate tasting areas that were also closed due to the pandemic. But you were still able to purchase Dole Whip ice cream. If you have been to Disneyland, you know that stand that is made of bamboo that is right outside of the Tiki Lounge. They have Dole Whip there, and you can purchase the juice with like the ice cream soft serve that's inside it to make it like a float, or you could just eat the ice cream as it is in all of its deliciousness. The other tickets that I had were for the Botanical Garden. There was also the biggest maze, I think, in all of the world, which is shaped as a pineapple. But since I didn't have the time for solving this puzzle, I decided just to take a walk at their gardens, and these purple lotuses were my absolute favorite. I didn't know that lotuses could be this rich in this purple. Usually lotuses are like a white with pink, maybe some flecks of orange, but I didn't know there were purple ones. And the beauty about lotuses are that they can grow in murky waters. So that was really cool to see a whole pond full of them, and it reminded me of my grandmother's pond at her place in the Philippines that also have koi like this. There were hibiscus varieties here, as well as monstera leaves and huge roots that were growing out of trees like spikes. And the colors of the leaves are just so saturated. It's crazy. After passing by all of the pineapple-themed merchandise, it was then off to the North Shore. Yes, I literally wanted to travel all around Oahu this time around, so I made sure to schedule a few hours there. Of course, I had to try out some shrimp. Usually people go for the shrimp trucks here in the North Shore, but I did a little bit of further research and decided to go with this shrimp shack called Fumi's, and it was so delicious. Their rice was perfect, firm but fluffy, and their garlic butter sauce was to die for. And then I took a stroll around one of the areas called Turtle Bay. It literally is called Turtle Bay because there's a lot of turtles here. There's a resort and a golf course that are dedicated to this area. But I was more interested in seeing the water and looking at the sea creatures and marine life that was out there. A lot of crabs were on the rocks that were by the breaking waves, and it was pretty windy. It rained a little bit, and then it was time to go to Waimea Falls. I checked out a couple more beaches, but they were so rocky, or you needed snorkel gear to really appreciate the environment, which I didn't have time for. But it would have been a great place to read a book or take a nap or have a picnic or do all of those three things at the same time. And I was scheduled to go to another waterfall where I would be able to swim at. So Waimea Falls was the next stop. Waimea Valley is actually literally a valley, and they have a whole forest, kind of similar to the rainforest, but more floral forward. So that means that their botanical garden has a bunch of different exotic flowers, plants, fauna, and it was really cool to see everything from hibiscus flowers to a giant banyan tree, and of course, trekking all the way up to see a waterfall and being able to swim in it for over an hour. The hike was a pretty good walk as it was uphill the entire way, but I got to stop along some beautiful areas that had specific plants growing and just got to breathe in really fresh air before heading into cool waters. Auntie Coco's lei garden is literally a garden dedicated to plants used for leis that are really different in color, fragrance, and have kind of like a rare lasting quality. Leis in Hawaii are a symbol of friendship, love, and trust. It is offered as a gift to friends and visitors, and the connection to its origins goes back to Southern Asia after hundreds of years of migrating from island to island eastwards over the Pacific Ocean. Auntie Coco Leong passed away in September of 2015, and her deep passion to teach and educate Hawaiian culture was through music and language. Upon crossing a bridge, I was able to spot the waterfall from a little bit of ways, and I headed towards it, listening to the sound of the rushing water get closer and closer. Life vests were required, but I was able to go under the waterfall and put my intentions out there and just kind of cleanse myself spiritually while I literally just stared at nature and soaked it all in, both inside the water and outside afterwards when it started to pour again. On the way down, I walked on the other side of the road so that I could check out other things that I probably didn't see on the way up. You know how things have different angles, just like how walking the same street versus driving on the same street gives you a different perspective on things. Luckily, by the time I got down the mountain, I was able to dry off with towels that I brought and change back into my outfit in time for a luau. Yes, last time I was in Oahu, I didn't get to do a luau, but the first time I ever came to Hawaii on the Big Island, I went to one that was part of a resort. The host was actually from Samoa, and so was his family, and they all kind of did these workshops in the beginning to kind of show how they use coconuts, how to open coconuts, how to grill and cook cacao beans, how long to roast things for, and his son, Tui, was 9 years old and was able to also fire spin, as we could see later. This time I wanted to experience something that was more authentic and that had everything from hula dancing to different dances that all the other Polynesian countries have adapted into their own culture. The food was amazing, and we were able to request seconds with the wonderful service of the staff, who were also the dancers, and it was really great because it was a family business. You guys know how much I love fire dancing, but overall it was an amazing performance, so go check out Toa Luau if you ever get the chance to visit Waimea. The moon was full on the ride back with some ominous clouds. Overall, this was an incredible trip. I spent the last morning kind of resting because I was just go for like 5.5 days, but it was so worth 6 hours of planning, 17 mosquito bites, a rainbow every day, lots of boat rides, gorgeous sunrises and sunsets, the immersion of nature, mild food poisoning from sempoke, and I loved every single moment of it and would trade it for the world. I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to bring home plants, but I was able to take a bouquet of red ginger from a new worshiper. I was so happy I got to take home the leis, and I actually used the water that it accumulated in the plastic bag as a dye for my sketchbook. If you've watched all the way to the end, I want to thank you guys so much for enjoying this video that I put together. It took me weeks in order to edit this mini movie of my life, and hopefully we will all get to travel again very soon. If you want to see my other travel videos, click on the travel tours playlist that I have found on my YouTube main page. Comment below what your favorite moment was in my trip. Join my membership tiers, which you can find on my channel. Like and share it so that others can be inspired on their next trip to Oahu, Hawaii. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you know when I have new content out. Follow me on social media at Mara Domina, and until next time, be safe, have fun, and keep exploring, everyone.